Yeah, they were kind of interned there, weren't they? They
Yeah.
weren't allowed to go back.
No.
Right.
And the funny thing is, the original plane that we flew wound up in Switzerland with another crew that had to make it there.
That wasn't the
one
Win
wheel
Some
wouldn't
Win.
come down. What'd you say?
Your original plane wasn't the Win Some Win, was it?
The second.
The second. Okay.
Yeah. Because it's 100% turnover.
Mhm.
Some guys went on their first or fifth. And the average was 13, I think. And so he had the remaining two engines going like we take off full bore. And the co-pilot is screaming, "You're burning up the engine." We fought that headwind going back. We were hanging at about 55 miles an hour.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and we're slowly losing from Frankfurt. We're heading to England. And pilots just got to lighten weight. Everybody threw out their extra ammunition. Even the waist gunners threw the guns out. I kept mine. I sat in the back. I'm not moving. Because at that time they were coming in from the rear. The best action maps. Actually, I took the rear because the chicken guy that was supposed to sit said he's too big. He took a waist gun. I got his picture here too, but I found out later on our last mission when they were attacking from the front. 5 across they were coming in, Focke-Wulfs.
Wow.
And the 20 millimeters that they were carrying, one in the nose blew my bombardier's 3 fingers off. No, that was my navigator. I don't know that was a bombardier. And one in the midship where Smitty lost his hand. The radio room, they took the door out for some dumb reason. And the radio man, he was firing through his turret, and the shells caught in his azimuth. We landed, I don't know, I think it's close to the White Cliffs of Dover. There's books and newspaper ads that I have that state what little towns. Like I say, he had both engines going. They were losing altitude. Everybody threw their stuff out. I think the farmers were shooting at us with shotguns or that way. So we get to the channel, and he says, stand by to ditch. So I'm still sitting in the tail. And we finally got halfway over, and some English fighters found us and escorted us. And just as we were ready to land, it was a false airfield, that had these blown up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they waved us off, and so we turned around, and just as we left that little landing place, we lost one more engine.
Oh boy.
The engineer in front, he was transferring the tanks, and we had our wheels down, was to say, and we came down rather fast. We hit a open spot, and we jumped a little creek with barbed wire, went over that, and up on the hill, plowed field. And everybody got out.
The gear didn't collapse?
Huh?
The gear didn't collapse?
No, the wheels were down for
Excellent.
landing.
Great.
We had no problem with that on that mission anyway. We had one on a training mission. Anyway, I used to wear, like I told you, my silk pajamas and a bunny suit, which was wired, you plugged in, and it had gloves, boots, and body. And then I used a gabardine
Jumps.
cover, and that's what I flew in.
Okay.
So I jump out finally, and this, I think he was a postman, comes running up the hill. I was already out, and I pulled my heavy wool jacket and I put it on. And he says, he's looking at me, he got about this close, he says, "Blimey." And I looked down, there's a piece of metal sticking right through.
Oh, no.
I used to wrap it around my feet. Missed me.
Wow.
And so people came running up and they brought us sandwiches and drinks. And then we were transferred to a base that flew us back to our original base. And later we found out that she was fitted out with, the mechanics came, fitted new engines in it, flew it off.
Wow.
It was a big crowd, people, you know.
Sure.
They evacuated a school or a farm, I don't remember. And we left her there.
What was the life expectancy of the B-17 crew during the war?
Well, like I say, the average, I think, made 13 missions.
Mm-hmm.
But then they said there's an average of 4%. Now, 4% with 25 missions is 100%. But, you know, some were knocked off on the first, second, third, 25th. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's...
Well, going back to your missions, how about if you tell us about your mission on February 22nd, 1944? That was your 13th, is that right?
Yeah.
Unlucky
That's Washington's birthday. You know, that taught me not to work on holidays.
Well, can you describe that mission and the battle that took place?
You know, sometimes they get jumbled, and I think of them constantly, though.
Mm-hmm.
It never leaves your mind. That was it. You went to 13?
Yeah, the 13th. Is that the mission you got shot down at?
Yeah.
With Smitty.
With Smitty, right.
Oh. Well, by that time, you know, we were used to being shot at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, we didn't do much shooting at fighters that came in. And at that time, they were real good. They would come through a group right through, you know, and they'd line up. And anyway, on that mission, we had the problem with the coming up and collision with another unit, and we formed and got over Holland, and then I see these fighters taking off, and but by that time they weren't coming from the tail; they were coming from the front. They came out of the sun. I'm sitting in the tail. I had just enough clearance where I can see them 5 across, and as soon as I could see the wings light up from the guns, I hollered, "Dump it!"
Mm-hmm.
And we broke up. That was a normal situation, I guess, when you get attacked. Some of them stuck together, and you know, with 25 planes, shooting at a fighter, they got to have a lot of guts.
Yeah, pretty concentrated firing.
And these guys were so good that, well, they hit us, the nose with a 20 millimeter, and in the midsection. Well, Smitty had to climb out of the ball turret because some of the shells from the radio man had caught in his azimuth ring. So he had, you know, he can swing in all directions. And some of the cartridges, because there was no door between the ball turret and the radio shack. And so he had to climb out. That's how he lost his arm. And they hit some flares. The whole place, it looked like a blue or gray atmosphere. And the only reason, and when Smitty lost his arm, of course he couldn't put a jump pack on his parachute. And the only reason I actually went into the waist, the pilot said, "Stand by to abandon ship." Now, I never heard that. Stand by business. And the next thing I see is 2 chutes go past me. That was a nose bombardier. So out of curiosity, mostly, because I had a little escape hatch, you see, bail out. But stand by to bail out didn't make any sense to me.
So when do you bail out?
Yeah. Well, he was a terrific pilot, but he did get excited at times, which is when he bailed out, he didn't have his legs strapped up.
Oh,
And when it opened, he had a backpack. And only his arms, he was black and blue there because he didn't put his legs strapped. You know, you're sitting there flying 8 hours.
yeah.
So I climbed out from the tail and I see Smitty standing there, and he was actually, I think, in shock. They used to talk about if any of the guys got really badly wounded, maybe it'd be better to dump them out over land and somebody would help them. Never make it back.
Mhm.
So, just by luck, I had picked up a clothesline, and I put a big clamp on one end, and I laid it by the hatch, the door, the midsection, and I was going to bolt it to one end so you can strap a guy and throw him out.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I took his chest pack and I snapped it on, and then the release was on the right side. He couldn't release it anyway. I remembered I had the line. Can I have a little water? And I held one end at the end, and I pushed him out, yanked on it, and he came down okay.
Were you in a dive at this time?
No, he set it on autopilot.
Okay.
Oh, well, the dive we had was when we got hit. And we took, it hit, one of the 20 millimeters came in at a glance, hit me on the back. I was wearing a flak suit. I had a back piece in the front, and a little apron.
Mhm.
Thank you.
7-Up, Jack.
That better?
Yeah. And it knocked me over my guns. I had a bruise here for about 2 weeks. And went out the side and blew half the tail off.
Mm.
And that's when we went straight down. And that's when I say he's a great pilot. We dropped about 8,000 feet before both of them, two little guys, pull that B-17 out of a straight dive. I mean, straight nose down. I couldn't move. I mean, I was stuck in the tent.
Right.
And when he pulled it up, he put it on automatic control, and he said, "Stand by to abandon
Okay.
ship." And everybody bailed. So it was time to go.
So that's why so many crews were lost, because when those planes were
Oh,
diving,
yeah.
they just couldn't fight the
No.
centrifugal force.
That I used to watch them. The B-17s, if they caught fire, I couldn't count to 10 before they blew.
Wow.
They had, we had electrical system and they had the oil. So when they got hit, they usually caught fire right away. And like I say, you're looking at these poor bastards.
Yeah.
They're stuck.
So you pushed Smitty out and
Yeah.
saw his chute open.
And then I stood there for a second or so. I was still wearing my sunglasses, and I said, well, at least Mom will get my $10,000 insurance. And I dove out, and I'm laying on my back. And I lost my glasses right away, and actually I'm hitting head down. Chute opened, it tangled in my feet, and I'm busy getting that untangled. And I was about 2,000 feet by then. As soon as I straightened up, I looked, there's high voltage wires running across we were in the Ruhr Valley by that time.
Okay.
I thought I was still in Holland. It was a pretty energetic fight we had. And I hear voices, so I finally hung down, and I see these high voltage wires running. And I says, I'm running right into them. Now it's pretty close to the ground. So I yanked on this ripcord, and I blew some air out of it. My chute caught on the wires. I hung about 5 feet off the ground in a plowed field with some little Christmas trees at the end. Because they used to say, first thing is make a delayed jump. And I sure did. Yeah. And maybe the underground. You know, we had guys that would get into the underground. We used to carry a pack in the leg that had maps of the area, money, a high energy chocolate bar, stuff like that. It was a small pack. So here I'm hanging, and I dislocated, I think, this thumb to get the chute off. I dropped to the ground. I'm heading towards the little Christmas trees. Bing! The home guard was on top of a hill. They had a couple of Russian workers. I don't remember. Anyway, I was smoking Lucky Strikes at the time, and I left them in the ship. But they gave me one of their cigarettes, which I think was one of the farm workers. And in about a half hour, a little car comes up. I think they were burning coal for energy. You could hear it put, 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 like that. And this, I don't know what his rank was, but he had a big rank, probably a major or something. Yeah, he come up with 2 soldiers, and there were guys I could see already in the truck. They picked up
From your crew?
Pardon?
From your crew?
No.
Oh, okay.
My crew, I think, had picked up by somebody else.
Okay.
And he looks at me and he says, geschossen? I said, yeah, good. About face. You know, Yiddish is a lot like German words, so I understood what he was telling me. Especially when they used to curse at me later on. I even had them curse at me in Russian.
Wow.
It's really a dirty word when you say "yop for your mutt." And I had a guy who used to wake me with a stick on the feet.
So how did the Germans treat you once they captured you?
Well, after I got into the truck, we drove to a little police station. That's where I found Smitty laying on the floor, and they had snipped off the rest of the skin, and they wrapped it. He was laying with his parachute and everything. They wrapped it up. He never bled that I knew. You know, at 25,000, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
No blood. So they snipped it off and bound it up, and he later got carted off to a hospital. And it was the last I saw him till I wound up at Stalag 6.
Okay.
And there was a hospital there, and he was part of the prisoners there. I got a picture of him. You know, he liked to play the guitar. That's why they used to call him the Okie. And he's fingering it, and the other guy is strumming it. Nice picture. I put it in my book. But, so I met him there, and he got shipped off early. And he got on a ship to Norway, I think. Famous movie actor. I forgot what his name is. He was some kind of lieutenant on the ship. So when he got home, he got in touch with everybody because they got different telegrams, missing in action. They're faded, but I got them in the book. I found those. My mother had saved everything, even my first letter when I got shot down. I tried to be cheerful and I'm fine, although I was still pulling out flack.
Yeah.
But I wrote a letter to my uncle, who was a captain. He was a chaplain in, Greenland or Iceland. And so I says, it doesn't look good here. If you don't hear from me, maybe I'll be lucky. And of course I got telegrams that they sent to my mother and father. And my father really took it bad. He had a little kitchen in the back of the store. I'm told he had a beautiful round oak, with big legs. He took that table and threw it across the room.
Oh boy.
He was a short 5'2", I think, but he used to do boxing in his young days. And he was a strong man.
Did the Germans interrogate you where you were from?
Yeah, well, from that police station, I got another funny story. He wasn't a policeman, didn't have a uniform. He was a nice old guy running the jail, I guess. And my radio man and he was in the jail with the bars already, and I was sitting there. I think they called me the Schwarze. I guess I was dark complected.
Oh, okay.
And so he said to me in German, "You want coffee?" I said, "Yeah." So we brought 2 cups of ersatz. It's made from roasted, some kind of rye. And so I'm drinking it, and I look at my radio man, and he's making a face. Now this, you have to understand, it doesn't come out in English too well. The only way I can describe it is, the guard looks at him, he says, "You don't like my coffee? Maybe you should drop coffee instead of bombs." I understood it. He gave him a blank stare, but he was making a face with the coffee. I mean, it was hilarious. And they bunked us in the barracks. They fed us brought a big bowl of boiled potatoes, carrots, and kohlrabi, which is really something to eat. We had plenty of kohlrabi. And the next morning, I really can't remember what transportation I took from there to Frankfurt on the Main. They had a big, or it's near there, I guess. They had a big center where all prisoners were interrogated. A very small cell, real small, just enough for a bed and to stand. And all the prisoners were in the jails. My co-pilot was about two cells down, and he kept hollering. His wife, whom he's just married, that's another, I can tell you a lot of stories, made him a scarf, and they took it away from him, And he kept hollering, "I want my scarf." And he kept it up all night. Actually, I got more co-pilot training than he did, because he used to sleep in the bomb bay, and I would sit there with the pilot. We would do some bombing, and instead of everybody going in the same direction, they're coming in from. We lost a few planes, in the dark, and my job as co-pilot was these other guys are coming in and they're flashing their landing lights, and I'd flash my landing lights. Who's going to play chicken, you know? And we killed a lot of cows.
Yeah.
They used a lot of dummy bombs, though.
Going back to being captured, when did the Germans find out that you were Jewish?
Well, I had my dad dog tags.
So they knew immediately?
Oh, yeah, they took them.
Were you treated differently, do you think?
Well, after they took them, you know, I went from pillar to post. You know, we kept moving.
Uh-huh.
So, the only time was in interrogation. Now, this officer comes in, and you got to believe me, comes in with a chart, and he says, "Oh, you're," and he spoke English with an English accent. He must have lived or trained in England. Truly. He says, "Oh, you're Jack Kushner. You went in October 13th. He's giving me statistics that he should not have. The only way I could reason that is they had a link here in America. Nobody's ever said anything about that." And he started reading off, graduated Dorsey High School.
Really?
How the hell would he know that?
Yeah.
And, you know, our instructions were name, rank, and serial number. Go jump in the lake. And so I says to him, "I can only give you my name, rank, and serial number, and you have it." And he argued with me. He says, "Well, we got to inform your parents that you're a prisoner of war," which is true, more or less. Because the radio used to broadcast and the telegrams were flying. And I says, he started asking me about the crew and the squadrons, and who the leaders. I'm sure he knew all of that, but he went through that. And I says, name, rank, and serial number. This went on for about a half hour. I figured they're going to shoot me anyway, you know. I was so pissed off, really, that we got shot down. So finally he got mad at me and he says, "Vadante, you're going to shoot you." And he posted the guard at the door. I fully expected it. And I had a mattress that was with wood chips in like a potato sack, big, and a blanket, and it was a horsehair blanket, and I spent my time pulling the horsehairs out of it. And so finally, some guy came in from the Red Cross. Or was it the Blue Cross? No, it must be the Red Cross. And he brought me, because I was just carrying a blanket out. At that time, I was not, I missed a little bit. All I had to wear when I got to interrogation was a blanket. He took me down to we always were lectured to take your walking shoes, you know, your GI, because if you get in the underground, they can clothe you. We carried an escape package, somebody picture of us, but they couldn't supply us good leather shoes. It was made out of paper and hobnails on the bottom. So he really stripped me down. He was my size. I guess he took it home. And shoes were a priority there too, I would imagine. So after all the time of thinking of taking my shoes before I jumped, they said, "You got to tie them on you," or something. I had them laying next to me. Anyway, everything went after I was captured. And I guess there were a shortage of toilet paper also, because I had to go, when I was, now I recall, what's that big city with a big church? I can't think of it. That's where I was in an airport with fighters taking off. I could look out the bars and see the ME 109s. And so I had to go to the toilet, and I says, in German, I says, I had to go. So he lets me out, and I go to the toilet. No toilet paper there. So I says, went up, I says, haben Sie Scheissenpapier? He says, Scheissenpapier? He gives me the fingers. That was cute, wasn't it? And then he steals all my clothes.
Jeez.
So when I went to interrogation in Frankfurt, that episode happened, and then this Red Cross